All right, welcome back, YouTube. This is going to be part one of a several part series where I'm going to be discussing programming and training and diving deeper into certain contexts and concepts so you can understand them better and apply them to your own training to be as strong as possible. So this first video is about adherence, training adherence, and we would define that as how well you are able to stick to the training plan or the program that you have. And I find that this as a baseline is the most important aspect of training compared to anything else. Volume, intensity, effort, psychology, diet, all of it. None of that matters if you can't stick to the plan ahead of you. If you can't stick to the program. I could make you the most perfect program ever for you that would put 500 pounds on your total. And if you can't even show up and adhere to it and follow every aspect of it, it doesn't matter. So that's why I'm starting the series with this as the baseline, adherence. So we could break down your adherence in a few different concepts. We can talk about, does your schedule fit? Is it enjoyable? And is it flexible? And those three things I think would cover the majority of training adherence. So let's start with the schedule. Whenever I make a training program for someone, I'm always trying to find out how much do they work and how busy is their schedule. Because if I go to give someone a 5 or 6 day training split and they work 80 hours a week, that's just foolish. That doesn't make sense. And the split has to fit you and your schedule. So if you're someone where you're in college and you're super busy, or you're a dad like myself and you've got a business or whatever, you've got a lot on your plate, it doesn't make sense to make a split that's super big, super complex, that you would have a hard time adhering to. If you've ever gotten busy, you know how much of a struggle it is to come into the gym, hit a powerlifting workout, and still have time to do all the other things. So you want to work around your schedule. So if it's open, allow there to be more days. If it's not as open, have less days, which will then allow for greater flexibility. So within that, we would want to put your heaviest days or your most important days on the day of the week that you have the most time to train or the best recovery. So if you work a manual labor job and you work, Monday through Friday and it's very demanding, Saturday or Sunday is probably going to be our best bet to have that training day. Or if your schedule, has an off day in the middle of the week and it's a demanding workload throughout the week, we would want to put your primary or your heaviest training day on that day and your easier sessions on the other days. Or if you've got availability and you really can't train on a work day or a specific day, structuring it around that. So for me, the lowest I typically go is a 3-day split. I've had some unique circumstances where a client only has 2 days and it's SBD, but for most people, they're gonna be between 3 and 5 days for their training split. So when you make yours, you've gotta think, can I adhere to this? Am I able to show up on these days, the days I planned out? And I would make it a point that when you structure the split, you shouldn't be thinking, I hope I can hit this. If I try really hard, I can hit this, like this mindset of I'm gonna work really hard to get better. I love that. But if you aren't realistic with yourself, if you're a little delusional about it and think, I'll be all right, but then you get into it and you've missed, in your 4-week block, 2 of those sessions, 2 different weeks, it doesn't make sense. So you wanna be realistic with the split so you can adhere to it. So that goes for days. That also goes for how long the workout is. If you have a demanding day and we want to get a session in still on that day, it would make sense for that workout to be shorter, less sets, in general, maybe higher intensity because we've got less sets, maybe less less movements. Instead of trying to hit every single muscle group, maybe we try to hit 3 or 4, push them really hard, and get something in, and have that something be useful, beneficial, as opposed to being overwhelmed by this long workout where they get halfway through and they skip the rest, or they call it early. That is so much more mentally and psychologically defeating that you're unable to finish the workouts in your training program, as opposed to your workouts just being a little bit easier. You can adhere to them and actually finish them. It's so much more of a mental win. And when I learned that with my coaching, with my clients, I'm gonna actually start off with the workouts being maybe a little easier for my super busy guys, maybe even less than what they could handle on the day. They're able to get through it. They have a really big mental win. And then once we establish a block of training or 2 where they're like, you know what, I can handle a little more on this day, we add in a little more. So less is more in this case for this approach. I always default to that. The next part we want to talk about for adherence is your training enjoyable? Right now in powerlifting, we've got this golden microcycle, talked about a lot, where we find just the perfect amount of sets, reps, intensity, days, the right variations, and we hold on to that because that works so well. And I do that with a lot of clients. If we have a structure that works great and will milk PRs until the end of the time, we want to run that, but not at the cost of enjoyment, declining heavily. Now, if we're going into a meet and I know that this layout works for you, tough luck. Like I want you to have a really good performance, and that's what you're paying me for, to perform on the meet day. But if we look at our training across the entire year or across many years, we can't be super rigid and stick to just one structure if it means that we get burnt out and we don't enjoy it. Some people are naturally going to be able to handle that better. Just lock in, focus, do the same thing. The autistic lifter that doesn't care, they're very robotic. But there is going to be lifters as well. You might be one of them. I certainly am one of them. After doing this for 8 years, I was on that same split month after month after month that I took 7 months off. That's what I then needed from all that time of such structured training to be able to enjoy it again. So for me going forward, I want to incorporate more enjoyability into my training. And what would that look like? So if we have this structure that works really well, allowing for some level of variation or something new within it. Now, even within my golden microcycles that I would like to run for a client, or their golden macro, what I think is perfect for them, I'm going to be switching out accessories over time. I might switch out some variations based on weak points I want to address. That's at the bare minimum, because I think we can still run that structure with a lot of people for a long time and keep it enjoyable. But if it's something where it's just like, man, we need to do something new, you could do something like a sumo lifter goes to conventional, or a conventional lifter maybe tries out some sumo. Or if you don't care about sumo and you pull conventional, you could try some block pulls or pushing heavy RDLs on a session. Having some type of new movement, a new novel stimulus to increase that enjoyability is going to be so big for just the mental win, the regaining of that focus that you have when you start a new training plan, where it's like, this is new, this is fun. So that could be for the deadlift. If we want to talk about squat, we could do high bar, we could do SSB, we could do some variation. We could even go to a hack squat for one day, or a certain squat accessory, and push that instead of just 2 comp squats every day. Bench, we can do dips, chest press, barbell, incline Smith machine press. There's variations of the competition movements that have carryover and still stimulate the same muscles, the same movement patterns that will get you strong. I took 7 months off from structured powerlifting. I didn't touch a barbell for squat, and I was doing really heavy hack squats and either really heavy belt squat or leg press, depending on the block I was in. And then I came in and squatted 600. No barbell training, and my max was 650. So literally, I wasn't even training the barbell pattern, and I retained a lot of strength from doing similar movements. So for those of you that have been on that structured split for so long, don't be afraid that by pulling away from the barbell movements, you're going to lose all your strength. It's going to be a waste of time. There will be a lot of carryover, and it won't be as bad as you think. Disclaimer, some people may need more specificity, more of these comp movements for it to really show up and be strong. And in that case, you may have a bit more of a downturn in performance, but that's okay, because the whole point of this adherence is that you enjoy training throughout your career to some extent. And if keeping that comp movement all the time makes enjoyment take a huge downturn, you risk just quitting or burning out completely. And I would say it's worth taking a month, 2 months, 3 months to do something similar and maybe have a little bit of a downturn in performance, but allow yourself to still enjoy the training. That way, when you come back to having more of the comp movements, you can push them harder with a better mindset. So don't be super afraid to lose some of your strength. You've got time. I think that's the issue that a lot of people have, this mindset of I need to maximize. And the longer you do this, I've been doing this for 8 years now, I realize, gosh, there's a lot of time ahead of me. And if I want to be able to do this for a long amount of time, it has to be sustainable. So incorporate new things periodically as needed to allow for you to have enjoyment, That way you can continue adhering to the plan you have. And then lastly, flexibility. There has to be some level of flexibility within your program. That way you can continue to adhere to it. You know, I've had people ask me, or your new athletes ask me, like, Coach, I can't get the session in today. Should I just skip it? And in almost every case, the answer is no. You want to find a way to work around it where either you do less, that way you can get it in, or you do it the next day and maybe shift some things around. The less training that you're missing, even if it's suboptimal, the better. Like, let's say we have to squat on a Friday and then squat again on a Sunday, and it's like, shit. Normally our squats are on Thursdays and then Sundays, and we have those 2 days rest, but I had to push the session back. I would argue having the flexibility to be able to shift a session and, let's say, do a set or 2 sets less on that session, or cut 1 set off the accessories, or make the intensity a little bit lower on that session. So on the next session, you're still adequately recovered or decently recovered, where maybe you're feeling the fatigue still a bit from that past session, but you had the flexibility to be able to move days around. I'll give the example of one of my clients, Zachary. The guy is a police officer. He gets almost no sleep. He's got a bunch of kids, a bunch of different practices, has to go all over. Very busy guy. So for him, we do 3 or 4 training sessions depending on where we're at with his life stress. And we're able to move them up a day or back a day or forward. You know, like, we're able to move them and have that flexibility, partly because he has less days. If he had 5 days, it'd be a little more challenging to move things around, because if you move 1 day, you end up moving all 5 or 3 of them. When you've got 3 sessions or 4 sessions, you have some flexibility. And by having that, you can adhere to the program instead of just missing a day altogether, or skipping it, or cutting it way early. So being able to move things around and knowing how to do that, such as taking some sets off, maybe adding a set on a certain day and maybe scrapping a future session altogether, there has to be ways that you can twist things and move them around to keep the athlete trained. Because if you're not flexible and you're too rigid, you miss the session, and we don't want that. The way you can look at the flexibility is depending on how your stress levels are within the year. A good example is college students when finals are coming up. Maybe we need to have that block be a little bit easier, a little bit less accessories, maybe a little bit less volume across the board to allow them to still train at a good threshold without that stress pushing them over the edge and just falling apart because of fatigue. Because stress plays a big role in your training. And you know, if you're a parent, if you're a dad, if you've got a busy life, you know this. My daughter was born and I was at the hospital like for 24 hours. I got no sleep because I was in the room with my wife, staying up, trying to take care of her as best as I could without getting in the nurse's way, just being there for her. And I got no sleep. And being me, I'm like, I am not gonna skip this next session. I'm gonna get in. So we got home, made sure my wife was okay. She slept with the baby. I went to the gym. I did like these hack squats with like 800 pounds. And for whatever reason, the way it was bearing down on my shoulders, the pads, tweaked this shoulder. I think it was my AC joint, something in my shoulder. And that shoulder was hurt for the next 6 weeks. I was out. Couldn't do anything in the upper body. Like, I had to go really light. Couldn't do any hack squats. Couldn't do any barbell squats. It was like just, it cooked me. And obviously I didn't know that would happen. You know, injuries can come out of the blue, but you have to be able to adjust your program or have flexibility within it depending on your stress levels. So an example for powerlifters, let's say instead of ending the final week at RP 9, you can end it at 8 or end it at 7, or have a block where you go 5, 6, 7, 7.5. Just keeping intensities a little lower. You know, if you're prescribing weight for back downs or for volume work, maybe dropping it 5%, something just to keep what you're doing still at a high enough threshold to keep you strong and keep you progressing, maybe even if it's a little bit slower than what you like. But having that flexibility allows you to stay healthy in some cases. Or if you're so busy, like I mentioned, still get the workout in and not have the stress kill your performance on the day. So flexibility, it's important. So summing it all up, is your schedule able to be fit with what you're training? Is it enjoyable, and is it flexible? And if you can nail these things and give yourself the room to make a training plan that fits you and works well, then you're gonna be a lot better off. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was comprehensive to some degree and you can have good takeaways for your own training. If you want to learn how to make a program, there's a link in the bio of a YouTube video I just did. It's an hour long, breaking down how I make a powerlifting program, very detailed. Hopefully that's helpful to you. And I'm just gonna keep going with this, talking about sets, reps, intensity, all the different things with training. Let me know in the comments if there's anything you want me to cover deeper or other than this. But yeah, peace. Hope you all enjoyed it and have a good day.